flashing.
You're not going to put that one on?
Hang on. Hang on. Okay, hi and welcome back. This is Frantz Kantor, a cartoonist, illustrator, toon talker. I'm playing with the buttons in the switcher, so you know it's going to be sort of it takes a few minutes to sync up things. I'm here at the Australian Cartoon Museum with the president.
Jim Bridges, downtown Docklands in Melbourne, Australia.
Yes, down in Docklands, or Locklands as we like to call it now.
Locklands, yes, Locklands.
Oh, Locklands.
We're all in Locklands.
Yeah. So, what do we... actually, an idea I had from the other day, we were doing a book review on 22 Panels That Always Works, which is a crib note page created by this guy, cartoonist and extraordinaire Wally Wood. And I'll just show you his little mush here. There he is. He's kind of like, in the comics industry, he's sort of like a James Dean or a Jack Kerouac or something. You know?
But that photo...
Or that Goomer that wrote that book I hate, Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, but that bloke looks like Brian Epstein after he'd been out on night drinking, you know.
Right. Okay.
And this is funny because he's noted for his space work, but he's also smoking cigarettes all the time as he worked.
Yeah,
and of course, that's such a really funny gag there.
Yeah. This is one of his ventures into adult literature, sort of, what would you call it, R-rated, I guess. Sally Forth is a... But still, again, you know, it's the technique that he has with brush and pen.
Yeah.
Just amazing. And zip tone and letratone, all that sort of thing. I just love this. This is a story about the spirit in space. This is a collaboration with Eisner.
Yeah.
So this is his signature, which is I don't know if you can make that out. It's a
like a woodcut.
Yeah, it's like an Old English
yeah
writing. But look at the details
in
the scenery, you know. And this is him. This is actually, I'm going to work from this photograph, or attempt to anyway, because I kind of like the expressions and things in that. But he's incredible talent and great influence. A lot of people. There he is. Looks like a bum there. You can see his guitar. There's stuff here that resonates with me. Typewriter, all of this thing.
Rubbish bin.
Rubbish bin. Everyone's got a rubbish bin. You know, he's a really talented guy.
And that's
him drawing with a cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah.
They used to smoke in those days. Some of his
underground
stuff and work for Eerie magazine, I think, or Creepy. Science fiction work, his EC comic stuff. He loved this sort of superstructure, this science fiction.
Yeah.
It really did that well. And of course the moon, you know, really very iconic illustrations of the moon. So
always
all
this
hardware.
I mean, what do you think came first, Kirby's hardware or Wally Wood's hardware?
Well, I think he kind of came earlier into that era, because that was in the 50s.
Yeah, he was doing
people
it,
like Virgil Finlay from the 30s, 40s, and 50s who did a lot of space science fiction stuff. But he was more into the surrealistic sort of science fiction. Yeah. This is really hardware. This is like if you're watching, B films or something, Rocket Ship Earth or something like that. I don't know. You would really enjoy this sort of comic.
You'd
some
paint
of his paintings, painted. Tommy gun.
That's a Tommy gun.
It looks like a good old boy. Hoo-wee! There he is working. Yeah. So, very prolific. This is a great guy.
Yeah.
Great talent.
He uses the moon a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah. No, he really understands,
Oh, this is the 22
this, of course,
panels.
is the 22 panels that always works.
Yeah.
So this is like a a cheat sheet for ideas if you're looking for compositions for panels, just to give you sort of help. This is of course Sally Wood, Sally Forth. So this is one of his originals. You can see the blue pencil underneath. Beautiful line work and letter tone, of course. So let's get started. We'll go back to the photograph. There's a lot of little things we've just gone through here, and we need to go back. I think this one, we'll use this one. Okay, so what I've done is I've done a little pencil sketch, just a thumbnail, just to work out some shapes here, and I kind of favoured this this sort of wedge shape for some reason.
Cut off cake piece.
Yeah, because apart from his eyes, there's a lot of activity going on in his head. Yeah, and I just wanted to feature
a lot of science fiction going on up there.
Yeah, a lot of thinking.
Yeah,
a lot of thinking. So again, with the reference material, the light's coming in from the right hand side, creating quite a strong shadow line. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge, I think, to see the right sort of detail. But as long as it's a symmetrical sort of front facing image with a slight tilt to it. So as long as we keep an eye on the left and right, we can sort of line things up and balance them properly. The recognition factor is going to come from the face area of the eyes, nose and mouth. So just the T-zone, this sort of mask area, we need to think about that. So all of the relative sizes and shapes and proportions and things which we're changing, we need to keep an eye on how they all fit together. It's like trying to fit a jigsaw puzzle together and making the pieces as you go. How's that analogy? So I've taken the opportunity to take this idea and expand it onto the grey paper, which is going to give us the ability to use some 3-coloured pencils, white, brown. In this case it's a terracotta Prismacolor, and this is a white Prismacolor, which means they're quite soft pencils, and this is a little bit harder. This is a black Polychromo, Faber-Castell Polychromo. So we're also probably going to use some Posca markers, which are opaque paint markers, which dry quite flat, and probably also a Zig pen, which is a brush pen. Okay, so those are things we're going to use, probably a couple of other things as well here and there, but let's try and get into the face now without further ado. Now this is quite a dark picture, and from this angle I might I'm just warning you that my head might invade the picture area from now and again as I move in for the kill. You've been very quiet.
That's terrible. Move in for the kill.
I want to move in for the kill.
That's a terrible thing, moving in for the kill.
So I've never drawn. He has a very unique expression. As I said, I was joking about it before, but he really does have that sort of good old boy look, like moonshiner and things.
Well, he had a reputation as a pretty dark sort of character,
Yeah, he had a dark sense of humour for sure. What was his last words or something you mentioned before? It was like a...
Oh, well, what did he say? Yeah,
if I had my time all over again, I'd cut my hands off.
He cut his hands off, yeah. Which I don't think any cartoonist went that far as, to be as dark as that, But he ended up topping himself anyway, shot himself.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's terrible. So, yeah, he died quite young. But he died in a sort of an iconic way.
He had a lot of health problems too, you see. He had a lot of health problems.
Lung cancer and things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, do you want to...
He was a chain smoker. We're not putting cigarettes in here.
No, we're not putting cigarettes.
I don't smoke.
But I'd put a bigger moon there. Looks like a cheesy moon there.
That's all right to have a cheesy moon.
Cheesy moon, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about him.
Okay, Wally Wood. Well, he was born in 1927 And
When
he
did he
died
die?
in 1981, so he wasn't that old.
How old was he? Mr. Maths.
Well, don't call me Mr. Math. God. You know, I went to a Catholic school and they teach to count up to 3, and after that it's a blessed bloody mystery, you know.
That's all they need you to know.
Yeah. Anyway,
We keep them dumb.
he drew and wrote at a very early age.
Yep.
And and he was really influenced by in his time, the best, like the classic comic strips in the newspapers, Alex Raymond, Flash Gordon,
And
you know, Terry and the Pirates by
Yeah.
Milton Caniff, and Hal Foster's Prince
Hal
Valiant,
Foster, yay.
and Will Eisner's The Spirit.
The Spirit, yeah, absolutely.
But his favourite was Roy Crane's Wash Tubs,
Right.
which was an adventure strip, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when he was 6, he had a
Look
dream.
at these eyes.
He had a
Incredible.
dream when he was 6 about finding a magic pencil where he could draw anything.
Yeah,
I think that's an extraordinary story,
it is.
that he could draw anything, you know. But he was 6, you know. Mm.
He didn't need the magic after that. He didn't need the magic pencil. He just created it himself.
Well,
That's a nice little...
he graduated from high school in 1944 and signed up with the US Merchant Marine,
Yeah.
Which was in the last year of the war.
The Korean War.
No, the First World War.
First World War.
Yeah,
Second World War.
yeah, Second World War.
Mm.
Sorry, did I say the First World War?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. And then
Doughboys.
he did that for a year, and then he enlisted into the US Army's 11th Airborne Division in '46, which is the year after the war finished.
Mm.
And he went he was assigned to go to Japan on the island of Hokkaido. Yeah, that's right. So at 20, the age of 20, he enrolled in the Minneapolis School of Art, but only lasted 1 term.
Mm.
And then he went to New York the year after that, and he briefly attended the Hogarth School of Art. Now, is that the Hogarth who drew Tarzan?
Yeah, Bernie Hogarth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who had that classical style, and he had those. He put out all those books on dynamic art and
Yeah.
anatomy, where he would have the legs. He would have a bloke moving his arms, and there'd be four different versions of his arms into one drawing, and 4 different drawings of his legs into one drawing.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't last there long, because he got, and then he enrolled at the cartoonist illustrator school, but he stayed there for less than a year. But in those, I mean, I don't know, he was obviously
Look at the troubled
a
lines
restless
here.
spirit, you know.
Yeah, he's quite. You can tell he has a lot of issues. This guy.
Yeah. Anyway, he bumped into a fellow artist, John Severin, who is no slouch himself. Him and his sister did lots
Marie
of work
Severin.
for
They
comics.
did Cracked.
Yeah. And John Severin did lots of war comics.
Mm.
Anyway, they were sitting in the waiting room and they met each other, and because of going the rounds and getting knocked back by everybody. He invited him back to. John Severin invited him back to his studio where he was working with Charlie Stern and Harvey Kurtzman, and Will Alder. He met him, and while he was at the studio, he learned that Will Eisner was looking for a spirit background artist. So he went over and saw him and was hired on the spot.
Mm.
So he was doing backgrounds for the spirit strip. Over the next year, he also became assistant to George Wonder, who had taken over the Milton Caniff strip Terry and the Pirates.
Mm.
So it says he's an assistant. So what does an assistant do to a major artist?
Clean up.
Does clean up.
Yeah.
Yep. And what is clean up?
Well, inking and just finishing off the ideas.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, he entered the comic book field by doing lettering, because this Terry and the Pilots was a comic strip, not a comic.
Mm.
So the first job he got in comics, which is where he's famous for, it was lettering. He did lettering for a year, and then he started doing backgrounds,
Yep.
and then he started doing inking, and it was with romance comics, you know.
Yep.
And in those days, it was $5 a page.
Yeah,
And-
so you have to do a few pages. You've got to work fast.
And he would do 10. He would ink 10 pages in one day, which is pretty fast, even for, you know. And then he began penciling at EC Comics, co-penciling and co-inking, with the Harry Harrison story "Too Busy for Love," which was Modern Love #5, and fully penciling the lead story "I Was Just a Playtime Cowgirl" in Saddle Romances #7. That was in 1950.
Right.
So in 1950, this is where he really kicked off. He began a lot of science fiction artwork for EC and Avon Comics, and during this period, he drew stacks of stuff: adventure, romance, war, and horror, and message stories. And he did a lot of stuff for EC, as I said before, and eventually satirical humour with writer-editor Harvey Kurtzman in Mad magazine, including a satire on the lawsuit Superman's publisher DC filed against Captain Marvel's publisher Fawcett, called Super Duper Man,
Yeah.
battling Captain Marbles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Super Duper Man is not an original idea, because it was a comic done
Mad
in
magazine.
Australia
Oh.
during the 40s
Oh, they
by,
copied
by
that.
Emil Mercer. Anyway, but no, those comics never got to America, you know. Yeah, and so Wood, Wally was, he convinced the EC publisher William Gaines to start a line of science fiction comics, which were weird science and weird fantasy, and they were later called, you know, weird science fantasy comics, you know. So he penciled and inked several of those, and I think that's some of his best work personally, you know. And he also did Two-Fisted Tales and Tales from the Crypt, the horror stuff, you know. Yeah, so working over scripts and pencil breakdowns by Jules Pfeiffer, when he was 25, Wood drew 2 months of Will Eisner's Sunday supplement newspaper comic book, The Spirit. So, that's a lot of work. And that was the Outer Space, the Spirit in Outer Space story you showed before.
Yeah.
And Wood recalled that he was paid $30 a week for lettering and backgrounds on The Spirit, and sometimes he got paid $40 when he did the whole drawing. Yeah. He also illustrated books, and in the late 50s and early 60s, he produced a lot of book covers and interiors for all sorts of magazines, for more than 60 issues of the Science Fiction Digest Galaxy Science Fiction.
It's a little it's in between a paperback
Well, it's
and
Reader's
a pulp
Digest
comic.
size. Yeah, Reader's
Yeah.
Digest size. Yeah, I bought a couple.
Yeah.
I remember,
Well, a
yeah.
lot of people don't know what a Reader's Digest is, but
Yeah.
you know, just sort of telling them
Well,
what.
it's a book put out by the CIA, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's small.
Yeah.
It's not a pocket book. Pocket books are designed to fit in the back pocket of your
It's a
jeans.
bit more squarish.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he illustrated such authors as Isaac Asimov and Philip K. Dick. And
Some of the classic
Frederick
science
Pohl,
fiction.
people like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, nice. Nice, and that's going to come up great when you do the dark stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, look, he's got like an incredible life-worn face, you know, and I'm not surprised he took his own life. Actually, it doesn't look very happy. If you came out of meeting with him, you'd sort of you'd feel a bit black and dark and depressed, possibly. I think, although he had a good, apparently he had a good sense of humor with a lot of the stuff, but I just think he has a few issues. This guy, and it's showing up in his face.
Yeah, it's definitely showing his face, yeah. He also did a lot of gag cartoons for men's magazines. I don't think he ever worked for Playboy,
No.
but he did things for Gent and Dude and Nugget. And then in '58, he inked the first 8 months of the syndicated comic strip Sky Masters of the Space Force, which was penciled by Jack Kirby. And some people claim that that's the best comic strip ever produced, like the quality of it. And I would think that's where Kirby caught on with all the hardware in the background, personally. And I don't have a copy of that series, but I've seen bits of it and it looks really, really good. And also, of course, that's also the one of the genesis of the Fantastic Four came out of that series.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he got into book illustration, and he was doing covers of. I remember I had a couple of them, kids' books, childhood of famous American series. So to have childhood of
George Washington.
yeah, those sort of things. Yeah.
We cut down a cherry tree.
Well, he did the covers. I remember he did the covers. I don't know if he did any illustration inside, but I remember them because I was looking at it, and it was distinctive style, and I remembered him from the early Mad magazines. That style, like he had his style of inking was, unique.
Oh, it was iconic.
It was unique. Yeah.
I don't think it was unique. I think it was really polished. He had a real sense of
well, it was so clean,
technique
and crisp. And when he did metal and stuff like that, it just came up so sharp, And the chiaroscuro of a lot of his work is just wonderful.
That's a big word for you.
Oh well, I've been meaning to. I'm now 70 years of age. I've been meaning to use it one day, and I finally used it.
So, chiaroscuro. Do you know where this comes from? Chiaroscuro.
Oh, it's the Renaissance.
Yep. High Renaissance.
Do you want to tell the world out there about chiaroscuro?
Well, if people want to, it's like film noir. It's a very dark.
It's a bit like that.
Yeah, it's a very dark, sort of subject-oriented genre. Where everything is starkly lit with usually one point of illumination, and the subjects are usually murders or some sort of drama.
I think you're getting
like
carried away.
Caravaggio
Getting carried away because
no, they're usually Da Vinci wasn't a chiaroscuro.
He talked about it.
Yeah, but that's just talking about it and
I
doing.
mean, Caravaggio.
You have to look at Caravaggio or Rembrandt. So their subjects were very dark when they delved into.
Yeah, but it's not the subject; it's how it's done.
No, it's the subject as well. It's film noir.
Yeah,
you can't do a film noir western. It doesn't work. You have to do a film noir.
But they have done
science
film noir
fiction.
westerns.
Yeah, but they don't work.
Yeah, because westerns have to be in colour.
Well, no, but it's western's all about the landscape.
I
man
know,
against
I know.
the man against nature. Film noir is man against himself. So it's the worst part of human nature, and that's what was reflected in chiaroscuro.
I think the art critics out there are jumping up and down. The art historians are jumping up and down out there.
No, you can if the subject. Look, they used to do. You could do anything. A still life that's lit by one light source, but it gives a menacing tone to the image, to the painting.
Well, but film noir really came out of German expressionism.
Yeah, but German expressionism is its own medium as well. So,
yes. Yeah.
Film noir actually it had roots in that. Chiaroscuro had roots in, like Rembrandt's early drawings of or paintings of light. But the subject matter really took over with chiaroscuro. Today you can do a chiaroscuro. You can do a Google search right now, chiaroscuro and film noir, and the photographs that will come up are people experimenting with this sort of, single point light source. But it does, that style does work best for extreme dramas.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And some of those extreme dramas are murders. You know, there's a famous painting by Rembrandt of the death of Holofernes, which is a decapitation scene.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, so it suits the subject matter.
Is this
it's
a
kind
good
of
time to talk about?
becoming inextricably tied together.
Is this a good time to talk about
Him.
Jim Steranko?
Well, we could talk about Jim Steranko, and we should draw Jim Steranko, but he hasn't got a lot of
But you
photographs.
You would draw him like this, wouldn't you? With a lot of heavy shadow in it. And
Yeah,
lines
dramatic
in the background. Yeah. Anyway,
accents.
so in the 60s, he got stuck into all sorts of stuff. In 65, Wally and Len Brown and possibly Larry Ivy created Thunder, which is T.H.U.N. which was the whole Man from U.N.C.L.E. sort of thing. Thunder Agents for Tower Comics. And during the 60s, he also did many trading cards and humour products for Topps chewing gum.
Yeah.
Including the concept roughs for Topps famed 1962 Mars Attacks cards, which we did a couple of weeks ago in the Norman Sanders book. And when I looked at those Norman Sanders pictures, I'm thinking, what, he's the guy who came up with that? And but then I thought about it.
Well, he's the illustrator.
Yeah, but this is. Do you want to just excuse me? This is the
Science fiction.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is
well,
Weird
it kind of
Science,
reminds you of-
EC.
Well,
and
look at the spacesuit.
yeah, and
the
this
legs.
is what he did in the 50s. So the top cards came later. So they're Wally Wood designs, not Norman Sanders.
No.
Anyway, with Marvel, he's known for doing Daredevil. When Daredevil New Modern costume, the red one, came in, because he was black and yellow when he started off. But yeah, we'll have to do a toon talk about yellow in comics. There's so much of it, isn't there? Okay, and during the Silver Age of comic books, he worked as a pencil and inker on Daredevil from 5 to 8, issues 5 to 8. And as I said before, he established the title's distinctive red costume. And then they introduced Stiltman into the Daredevil number 8, where Daredevil guest starred in the Fantastic Four. Wood inked that character, Daredevil, over Jack Kirby's pencils and on the cover throughout the interior. So it sounds like that means that he actually he just inked Daredevil and not the rest of it, doesn't it? Okay, he also penciled and inked the first 4 10-page instalments of Doctor Doom, which I didn't know that. In Astonishing Tales 1 to 4. And also, he's known as the artist of the unsigned satirical Disneyland Memorial Orgy poster, which first appeared in Paul Krasner's magazine, The Realist. And the poster depicts all of the Disney characters copulating and having all sorts of stuff and doing drug use. And of course, Cinderella's castle in the background has a huge $sign radiating, you know. And
that was in the 60s? When was that? 70s, that would be.
Yeah, it was in the 70s, yeah. And when he was asked about it, and did he do it? And he said, I'd rather not say anything about that. It was the most pirated drawing in history. Everyone was printing copies of that. And I understand some people were busted for selling it. And he says, I always thought Disney stuff was pretty sexy, Snow White, etc. But Disney didn't take any legal action against the Realist magazine, but did sue a publisher of the black light version of the poster, which used the image without Krasner's permission. You know,
the swinging 70s. That was the era of black light posters. So you get this neon-looking poster and you put it up on your bedroom wall, and then you get this horrible black light and put it on, and they would glow.
Which your white undergarments all shone through your shirt.
Yeah, and if you had dandruff, you're in trouble.
Yes, but also if you had a lot of work done on your teeth, it'd show up straight away. And yeah, those are the days. You go to a party and it just had all the black light everywhere, you know.
Mm.
Well, it wasn't black exactly, was it? It's sort of blue.
Yeah, it was purpley.
Yeah.
Ultraviolet.
Yeah. Those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never end.
So what's his...
Anyway, at DC, he goes to DC and he starts up a comic called Captain Action. That was in '68, and then he even inked Superboy at one stage.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he discovered, this is interesting, I didn't know this, but when he discovered that Jack Kirby had returned to DC to do the New God series, he called the editor, Joe Orlando, in an attempt to get to be Kirby's inker.
Mm.
But that role was already filled by Vince Colletta. And I just, what if? Because they worked together so well.
Mm.
Yeah, and he also worked as a ghost artist for an episode of Prince Valiant. So he'd have to change.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but he would have to change his style a little bit. Although
Yeah.
he had a chunky style like
Foster.
Yeah, but Foster stopped doing years ago. Other people were doing it.
Mm.
Yeah. In 75 to 77 in DC, he produced several covers for Plop, which was like an underground, overground magazine comic that people like Basil Wolverton did covers for.
Mm.
And then he did the inking artwork with Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby on Stalker and the Sandman comics. And he worked on Hercules Unbound, doing the inks. And he inked and penciled All-Star Comics and contributed to the creation of Power Girl. Do you remember Power Girl?
No.
Well, she's famous because he exaggerated the size of her breasts, and it was the first time in a comic, like a
So was it
overground comic where a woman had really big
overground?
breasts.
So it was a parody or something.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And he inked Frank Miller's cover of Daredevil, issue number 64.
Uh-huh.
And the last mainstream credit was inking Wonder Woman number 269 in July 1980, because he died the next year.
Mm.
Anyway, he was a publisher also. He was actually, in a way, you could say that he was the first underground publisher. There were little porno comics called Tijuana Bibles, which were tiny little things of having famous cartoon characters having sex, which all the history of underground comics, they always say that they were the first.
Mm.
But he was an independent publisher. Anyway, he put a magazine out called Wits End in 1966, and it was going to be called Etc. Etc., but that had already been taken. So
He was at his wit's end.
he was, yeah. So anyway, he did this, and he did it before like 10 years. So this is 66, and Zap Comics is a little bit later, isn't it?
Mm.
The Crumb.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Mike Friedrich did Star Reach, which was 76, and Flo Steinberg did Big Apple Comics, which were they're called the first alternative comics. But Wood actually drew a cover for Big Apple, which that's his cover.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's in and out of the undergrounds, you know.
Mm.
But Wits End,
Tell people how you get underground comics in that era. You have to go to a dope shop.
yeah, So it was
And
hard
they
to-
don't sell dope in dope shops. They sell the paraphernalia for dope.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine like a little 14-year-old kid rocking up to a dope shop in Bondi Junction, you know, looking for
Well, things were pretty bad because
comics.
we had a shop in Elizabeth Street, Melbourne, which sold that stuff, and they had a poster, a black and white poster of Michelangelo's David, the statue of David in the window, and he was busted. Someone complained, and he was busted. So they were
because it had no green leaf over the.
no green leaf. That's right. Anyway, with this, with Wits End, it was
So it
pretty.
just showed the two meat and veg. It doesn't really have any maple leaves.
That's right. Anyway, with Wits End, he got professional cartoonists doing
Meat and
work.
two veg is what I should say.
People like I'm just trying to think what their names. But people who worked top names who worked in the comic were doing these independent things, and are doing stories that you and illustrations and graphic stories you just couldn't do in ordinary comics. Anyway, after the 4th issue, he handed over to some other guy. And then he got stuck into doing his Sally Forth, which were originally published in the US Servicemen's Periodical Military News and Overseas Weekly. And of course, they were published in bits and pieces all over the place, and then finally Fantagraphic Books in '98 collected the entire run, which was 160 pages, and you saw in the intro some of the Sally Forth things. And in '69 he created another independent comic, Heroes Incorporated, Canon.
Yeah,
which
that was
was-
a good looking comic.
Yeah, and which he worked with Steve Ditko and Ralph Rees and Ron White and Canon, the Misfits and Dragonella, and he did all sorts of stuff. He did stuff for horror comics. Yeah, and well, this is in 1980 and 81. He did 2 issues of a completely pornographic comic book entitled Gangbang. It featured 2 sexually explicit Sally Forth stories and sexually explicit versions of Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, titled So White and the Six Dorks, Terry and the Pirates, titled Perry and the Privates, Prince Valiant, titled Prince Violate, Superman and Wonder Woman, titled Stupperman meets Blunder
Again
Woman.
with the Superman.
Yeah. Well,
Blunder Woman.
Duper Man.
Super duper.
Flash Gordon was titled Flasher Gordon, and Tarzan was titled Starzan, which I think a song came out about Starzan. Yeah. Anyway, he also did Alice in Wonderland called Malice in Blunderland, and a second Flash Gordon send-up called Flesh, Fucker meets Wonder Woman's Lib, and the Wizard of Oz titled The Blizzard of Oz. Anyway, then we get through the panels that always work.
Yeah, but what you neglected to say is in those comics he put the same level of quality and detail that he did in all of the other mainstream comics.
Yeah, but
So
even,
it was
I mean,
quite
even-
unusual to see that.
even his fast work, his very fast work,
Yeah.
he wouldn't spend too much time with the backgrounds like he did with all those early EC stuff, but still high quality, professional, It's just, in all those underground stuff, his was the most professional, it just stood out, The other guys cut corners, but not him. Yeah, so the panels would always work, but they're basically shortcuts, which you talked about. And over time he created a series of layout techniques sketched on pieces of paper which he taped up near his drawing table. And they were visual notes, to remind him of how to, just to break up the story,
Yeah.
And they were collected on 3 pages. And but he also used to give them to his assistants to help them doing various layouts and compositional techniques, And he wanted the pages to keep dynamic and interesting, So he also taped up this note to himself, which is Never draw anything you can copy. Never copy anything you can trace. Never trace anything you can cut out and paste up.
He's laughing.
Is that a good advice to young people coming on?
It's his sense of humour. He's cynical. He's very, you know, there's a reason why he's like that.
Anyway,
You can tell he's cynical. Look at the expression on his face.
one of his ex-assistants, called Larry Hamer, was then an editor at Marvel Comics, and he pasted up photocopies of Wood's copyrighted drawings on a single page, which this guy titled Wally Wood's 22 Panels That Always Work. And it was also subtitled, or some interesting ways to get some variety into those boring panels where some dumb writer has a bunch of lame characters sitting around talking page after page after page.
Yeah.
Now, but Larry Hammer left out 2 of the original panels, there were 24, as his photocopies were too faint to make out in some of the lighter sketches.
So we've never been able to find out what they were. I guess.
No. Anyway, so he passed these out to the artists who were working in the Marvel bullpen, who in turn passed them on to friends and associates, and eventually 22 panels made the rounds of just about every cartoonist or aspiring comic book artist in the industry and achieved its own iconic status, which it has, because we even did a film on it the other day.
Yeah, but I just like
an Australian version.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that. I mean, it is iconic, and yeah, you can use it as a cheat sheet, but it's really a tongue-in-cheek piece. It's not a real cheat sheet. It's not. It was never intended to be. It's fun. Yeah, it was never intended to be actual, crib notes or something.
Yeah.
It was just a fun little
observation. It's had a huge influence, hasn't it?
Because he had such a dark sense of humour. He would make fun of.
But it's had a huge influence, hasn't it? I mean, it was around before they put out books, Draw the Marvel Way and all those other manga books,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Draw the Manga Way, or Draw the Marvel Way, or manga, they don't really go into the composition or the layout of storytelling, visual storytelling that much. Well, they just go into the layouts, which, they tend to favour the different layouts, but not the different ideas for visual storytelling. It's mainly technique.
Well, it had a lot of influence, and in 2010, Anne Lukerman of Kill Vampire Lincoln Productions produced a short film adapting the 22 panels that always work into a film noir style experimental piece called 22 Frames That Always Work.
Yeah, you can watch that on YouTube.
Okay, good.
I play that for my students.
Okay, well, I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen that. And artist Raphael Kayanen created a revised version of 22 panels that used the actual art from published Wood comics to illustrate each frame. Now, that'd be interesting. And of course, in 2006, cartoonist and publisher Cheese Hasselberger, now you reckon that's his real name? Cheese Hasselberger, created Cheese's 22 panels that never work, featuring bizarre situations.
I've never heard of that.
And generally poor storytelling techniques.
Okay. Actually, that would be fun to look at. I would love to see stuff that's 22 panels that never work.
Yeah. And this gets back. For much of his adult life, he suffered from chronic, unexplainable headaches.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's right. And in the 70s, following bouts with alcoholism, he suffered kidney failure. And he had a stroke in 1978, causing the loss of a vision in one of his eye.
Oh, God.
So, faced with declining health and career prospects, he shot and killed himself in Los Angeles on November the 2nd, 1981. And as I said before, towards the end of his life, an embittered Wood would say, according to one biography, "If I had to do it all over again, I'd cut off my hands." And in 1972, Harvey Kurtzman,
Yep, you got it right,
who had worked closely with Wood during the 50s, said Wally had a tension in him, an intensity that he locked away in an internal steam boiler. I think it ate away at his insides, and the work really used him up. I think he delivered some of the finest work that was ever drawn, and I think it's to his credit that he put in such intensity into his work at a great sacrifice to himself.
Yeah.
And he said that 9 years before he died.
He certainly is. You can tell from this drawing, he's very, very intense. You know, I don't think you come up with a personality as strong as this. I'm gonna put some. He's got like a good old boy skin texture, but I'm going to try to. I've made a sort of an attempt at, like, I can't really do film noir here, but I've made an attempt at sort of lighting it like that. So I'm going to put a few.
Well, you're not going to make it as dark as that, are you? As the photo?
No, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Also, Luke lost something here. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to find out what's missing, where you've left off.
The other impressive thing about Wally Wood is that I mean, he's probably he's probably the second most popular cartoonist in comics after Jack Kirby.
Wow.
And when they brought out the inaugural what is it, the inaugural Jack Kirby Award, in what year was it? He also
81.
won. I think it was 81. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, and he also so the inaugural Jack Kirby Award was won by him. So he's number 2, really, because Jack was number 1 in comics, and very prolific and very professional.
Yes.
And with the use
Troubled
of that
witty and
the 22 panels that always work, he obviously had a lot of influence. And I think I read somewhere, or I actually saw a copy of it at a friend's place, where all these people did their own versions of it, and it's a very thick. It was
a popular.
It was photostated, so I don't know if it's an actual published work.
It's a popular subject. I remember seeing it on DeviantArt years ago. But I was in an exhibition. There was a thing run by the Black and White Artists Club.
Yeah, and
Supernova.
Yeah, Supernova.
Years ago.
In Sydney. Yeah. Which in a couple of weeks it'll be up on our site.
Which site? This isn't your channel. This is my channel. So what is it? Toon Talk.
ToonTalk.show.
That's the one. Yeah. So if you go to toontalk.show, you can
In a couple of
subscribe
weeks.
to the thousands of other people.
We'll have to get a book. We'll have to do a book bite on him too.
Yeah, but don't do that before you subscribe to me.
Yeah, subscribe to him. Yeah.
Because I like doing these caricatures or drawings of people.
It's interesting how
Expand it
you
to
always
other
say
things.
caricatures or drawings. You know.
Well,
I know you're an illustrator, and
I'm an illustrator
first
that
and
uses
foremost-
caricature.
First and foremost, you're an illustrator.
Yeah. I am an illustrator.
Yes,
and
you
I
are.
like
First and foremost.
storytelling.
Yes, and that's what an illustrator does. Tell stories.
So a lot of illustrators use.
They're up front. They
caricature.
tell stories. It's not sneaking them in, in the back door.
No, he used to sneak stuff in the back door. I used to feel like, when you read his comics, you feel a little bit dirty afterwards, I must admit.
Really?
I really didn't get the Sally Forth stuff. I didn't understand the thing.
Well,
now that you mentioned that it's for the GIs, then it kind of makes sense in a way. It's not really pornographic. It's very, very tame. But, it's like pin-ups in a comic form.
But it's. I mean,
with
in every
innuendo.
country. I mean, Jane. Like there was there was a comic strip called Jane during the war in England, and she was forever losing her clothes, you know.
Oh yeah, I
and they had
understand
these things in Europe all the time, you know, in Spain and France and Italy.
Yeah,
all
yeah,
these,
yeah. No, I get
you
it.
know.
I understand that. I
So
understand
he
the
was like
premise.
he was like the first one to actually do that. He's following a worldwide tradition, you know.
Is he?
Yeah. So.
Beauty French postcards. Some.
But I loved his inking. It was so sharp and
Well,
black
that's the
and
thing.
white.
People
It was
collect,
beautiful.
People collected Sally Forth artwork and, you know, and the comics and things because of his,
Yeah.
the amount of energy and talent that he put into.
Well,
you know,
I reckon
something
he was one of the
that is
best
really-
inkers in the business. He just had this wonderful, like, especially with his own work, he just had this wonderful sense of black and white, you know, which is what I like about him.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen his work in colour.
And
I've seen his paintings.
His
and-
superhero.
But his black and white work is really exceptional.
Have you seen his paintings? What are they like?
I showed you one before.
Yeah, but that's just a cover. That looked pretty.
It was still a painting.
yeah,
It wasn't coloured.
Yeah, it was a colour cover, wasn't it? For a
No, it
comic?
wasn't. There wasn't ink. It was just paint.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, so I love contrast in comics, and I prefer black and white comics, and I think we were lucky in Australia because we got reprints, black and white reprints of all the Marvel and Superman and the DC comics, and you just have the black and white drawings, and you can see you don't have all that terrible muddy colour to bugger it up, you know.
Yeah, well,
But you could actually, but they're educational because you could see closer to the, you could see more clearly the dynamic use of cartooning, you know, in black and white comics.
Yeah, well, it's more transparent, I guess, of the technique. But the artists that did them, they weren't in black and white. I mean, they weren't in colour when they did them, so they could only really see their work in black and white until it was printed, because it was just how the business was run. It was how the comic business was set up. It was on newsprint. It wasn't magazines, so they couldn't do full colour. So it's kind of like it's the way that the artist would remember their own work in black and white. You know, and having worked in newspapers for many years myself, there is a certain aesthetic, a certain feeling you get from working in black and white. Granted, this is like a duotone, but two colours, black and white and brown. But it's a nice feeling of I think working in like limiting your palette to a.
But black and white has
light and shade
built-in drama. It's got built-in gravitas. You know, some of the greatest political cartoons of all time have a lot of black ink in them to sort of give it the gravitas. You know.
Yeah.
The weight of what they're saying.
Well, when I used a lot of black on my illustrations, and depending on the paper, you get a note. Don't use so much black, because it would sort of taint the stupid photographs on the other side of the newspaper.
Of the paper, yeah. Bleed through, you mean?
It wouldn't be bled through, but it kind of, when you turn the paper, you can see it's blotting out the photo.
Yeah.
And I could care less.
Well, you did a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, but most of the
especially-
papers I worked for had the ability to reproduce proper blacks.
Yeah, especially
Like
in
the
the Australian, yeah.
Yeah, the Australian and also Fin Review.
Yeah, I was cutting out a lot of your work then.
Yeah, you and the budgie.
I thought you were the most European of
Yeah.
Australian in your style of drawing. I thought you were the most European style of artist in Australia.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
I remember you did that band poster for the Australia Post.
Yeah.
Who was it?
Gorbachev and
Was it Gorbachev?
no,
Reagan and
Chernenko.
Chernenko. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That was done for Clemmages in Melbourne.
Yeah. Well, it didn't last long, did it? They pulled it the day after it came out, didn't it?
Yeah, but I heard also they said they pulled it. It was in the papers. It made like the press, but they didn't pull it. It was on there. It was in the news, in the post office.
Well, I bought my copy the first day it came out.
Yeah.
It's a poster where Reagan and Chernenko are exchanging Christmas cards.
Yeah, it was a campaign to send Christmas cards, basically. You know, increase the Australia Post business.
Yeah. Remember Christmas cards?
No.
I still send them, except I didn't send them last year. God.
Well, you're getting with the program now, aren't you?
Well,
no one sends that stuff anymore.
No. But I love getting cards from cartoonists because they do their own cards.
Well, it's faster.
And the
you
museum
don't have to run out and buy it.
And the museum have a lot of those in the archive.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. With some nice notes from people I've met over the years.
So this is actually telling me an awful lot about this guy's face.
That's right. It's like
I'm sure it's telling you a lot as well.
Well, he's got fault lines. He's got worry lines.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems.
A lot of scarring up there, isn't there?
But you know, it's kind of interesting to draw. I like the variety in the textures and the sculpts of light and shade. It's really a fun exercise.
You've spent many hours at a drawing board all by yourself. And can you put yourself in his shoes? It's hard enough doing that sort of work, let alone trying to do it with headaches continually, you know?
Yeah.
No wonder he got onto the booze, because, you know, the booze sort of, you know, numbs it a bit.
No, I don't think so. I think he's... I kind of, looking at this, I kind of get the impression that a lot of the troubles are self-inflicted. So that it's sort of like there's a lot of issues going on here, probably starting with, you know, a lot of doubt, self-doubt or whatever, and then advancing into, you know, this
hang on, he was the youngest artist at EC.
But, you know, I've seen photographs of him with his wife and his kids, and, you know, was happy little guy.
Well, he got married 3 times.
Yeah, was happy 3 times in his life. So that's true. Yeah, he did get married 3 times. But that doesn't mean he wasn't happy. He was happy 3 times. Sort of you get a bit of you know, nostalgia, I guess, thinking about his wonderful work, his dedication to this you know, light and shade and the beautiful science fiction illustrations that he did were just magnificent. So, but you know, there is a dark side of him, no question. Help that out with I'm going to go back into this in a moment with a white brush. I just want to try to get into the mood here.
You've got to put more chiaroscuro in that picture.
Yeah, I'll get the chiaroscuro brush in a moment.
Get the chiaroscuro brush. Is that half white and half black, is it?
So if you look at...
I just love that story that, you know, when he was 6, he dreamt of finding a magic pencil where he could draw anything. I just thought that's a fantastic story. I mean, there's a kid's book there straight away, isn't there?
Yeah.
The magic pencil.
Look, there's a lot of beautiful skin, you know. It's got this turtleneck sweater. It's a turtleneck. It's not a turtleneck sweater. It's like, reminds me of the turtle from Kung Fu Panda. A lot of fantastic skin. Yeah, moidal. So let's go. Let's get some of this. This is a brush. This is a Posca Marker, but it's a brush instead of a point media. So what it actually does is it's got a pump at the end, and you can just push it. So it's running out a little bit of ink, but you can try to force it out. Ooh, it's not coming. Maybe it's out.
You want me to open up another one?
No, it'll have to be charged if I do that.
Charged?
Yeah.
What's that?
No,
To
that's not
Posca?
one. No, I bought another one. See, what you got to do is push it down to the bristles, so it wets the bristles of the brush, wets its whiskers. See?
Yeah.
And it's nice because it's not as opaque as the point marker, and you can go thick and thin, and you can get a little bit of feathering here and there, and it just adds a bit of sparkle to the touch, to the painting, to the drawing. Sorry.
Bit of sparkle, eh?
Yeah. Well, look at this. It's sort of. Contrast. It's all in the contrast. So if you ever wanted to paint or draw the moon, if you ever want to draw the moon, you would do yourself a favour by looking at his drawings.
Yes.
Because the way that he draws the moon, it makes the moon look more like a moon than a photograph.
Yes.
You know, they're very, very beautiful. And space hardware. No one's been able to do space hardware the way that he did. He, you know, it's sort of like, no, if ever you need to draw that, if ever you need to draw sort of a 1950s superstructure inside a spaceship, or you know,
check him out.
you have to study his work because it's extraordinary. Really understood it. He was an incredible talent. I don't. There's a problem with doing too many little points here and there. You kind of build up it tends to sort of disappear in the end. You get too many highlights. You got to be careful. But I'm trying to give a sense of texture. You know, like some shiny bits to make it interesting, look or feel interesting. Let's use a smaller pen than that. We use this one. This is another Posca. So I'm going to put a few little. If I was doing the right thing by him, I'd be doing.
It's just
like
wood crackle.
galaxies.
It's just wood crackle, is it?
Yeah. These are little Jeffrey Jones circles. I often do that. That's another artist I haven't spoken about. My biggest influence in my life.
Well, he was great.
Was
black and white artist, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah. He did Idle and I'm Age in the Heavy Metal magazine.
We've never done a
book bite. No.
No, I've got a book on him. It's really big, but I
Yeah.
have to lift the camera right up.
Yeah, it was he's probably my muse in a way, sort of the most influential artist in my life.
Well, he had all sorts of muses himself, didn't he? You know, he had Mucha, and he had Klimt, all sorts of people.
Klimt, yeah. And Igor Sheila,
Yeah.
things like that. So there we go. That's Wally Wood. That's Wally Wood. It's a sad story, Wally Wood, but you know his work speaks for itself. There he is. You know, he has happy moments. So I don't want you to feel like, you know, oh, it's terrible sadness.
That's the
It's kind of like this.
the Jack Kerouac period.
Yeah, the philosophical, you know, 50s and something. You know, like he's he's there. That's a beautiful tribute to his friend
Right.
Robert Crumb.
He lived and
from his
died for his
friend.
art.
Yeah. So this is Frantz Kantor and
Jim Bridges
saying we'll catch you
on the flip side.
Bye bye.